By September and early October 1929, stock prices, which had reached great highs during the bull market, began to decline.
Everybody was trying to find a bottom.
Renewed inflation fears with the decline in the dollar, rising interest rates, and huge budget and foreign trade deficits.
Dow at the same time has fallen about 18%.
The stock market is now down 21%.
Have you ever wondered how humans went from bartering for goods and services to the complex financial systems we have today? From metal coins to paper money, and now even digital currencies like Bitcoin, the history of money is a fascinating journey. But how did we get here? How did we move from exchanging goods directly to the creation of currencies we use today? Our story begins with bartering, a system where people traded goods and services directly without using any kind of currency. Early humans were self-sufficient in their way of life. They grew their own crops, reared their own animals, and made their own tools and clothes. However, there was one thing that they couldn't produce on their own: salt. Salt was a precious commodity in those days, not just because it added flavor to food, but because it was necessary for preserving food and maintaining good health. So, the people of the village would travel far and wide to trade their surplus crops and goods for salt. Salt was so valuable at that time that the salary of Roman soldiers was paid in salt. This system of bartering worked well for the villagers, as it allowed them to exchange what they had in abundance for what they needed. It was the only way they could get their hands on salt, as there were no stores or markets to buy it from. And so, bartering became an essential part of their way of life, helping them to survive and thrive in a world without modern conveniences. So, what went wrong with the bartering system? While bartering was an effective system for the exchange of goods and services in the past, it had some inherent limitations that eventually led to its decline. One of the main problems with bartering was the lack of standardization and uniformity in the exchange process. Each item had its own unique value, and it was challenging to determine the relative worth of one item in comparison to another. This made transactions time-consuming and sometimes difficult to negotiate. As societies became more complex and trade became more widespread, these limitations of bartering became increasingly problematic. It was challenging to conduct large-scale transactions, and it became clear that a more efficient system of exchange was needed. Money was introduced as a medium of exchange, which helped to standardize the value of goods and services and make transactions more straightforward. So, people began to use a medium of exchange that was more universally accepted, such as seashells, cattle, or precious metals like gold and silver. The use of money as a medium of exchange can be traced back to ancient civilizations such as the Mesopotamians, who used pieces of silver as a means of payment. However, the modern system of money as we know it today was developed over centuries of evolution, and multiple major events shaped its history. For example, the Yuan dynasty of China made a significant change in its currency system in 1260 CE, as they transitioned from using coins to using paper money. By the time the famous explorer and merchant Marco Polo arrived in China around 1271 CE, the emperor had a solid understanding and control of the money supply and the different denominations in circulation. This marked a significant development in the financial system of China during the time. In the 14th century, banks were established in Italy by families. The most famous Italian bank was Medici Bank, established by Giovanni Medici in 1397. These banks started issuing banknotes as a form of currency. By the 15th and 16th century, it had reached Northern Europe. Later, in the 17th century, Amsterdam and the Dutch Republic became a center for important banking innovations. These innovations continued in London since the 18th century, and later, gold standard was introduced. The Industrial Revolution in the 18th century led to the expansion of trade and commerce, which made it necessary to standardize currencies across nations. The gold standard, which linked the value of currencies to a fixed amount of gold, became the dominant monetary system. The gold standard was first introduced in the United Kingdom in 1821, and it quickly spread to other countries around the world. The century's dramatic increase in global trade and production brought large discoveries of gold, which helped the gold standard remain intact well into the next century. As all trade imbalances between nations were settled with gold, governments had a strong incentive to stockpile gold for more difficult times. However, this all changed with the outbreak of the Great War in 1914. With World War, political alliances changed, international indebtedness increased, and government finances deteriorated. While the gold standard was not suspended, it was in limbo during the war, demonstrating its inability to hold through both good and bad times. This created a lack of confidence in the gold standard that only exacerbated economic difficulties. It became increasingly apparent that the world needed something more flexible on which to base its global economy. So the gold standard was officially abandoned, and the Bretton Woods system was introduced in 1944.
But I have an uncomfortable feeling that this prosperity isn't something on which we can base our hopes for the future. No nation in history has ever survived a tax burden that reached a third of its national income.
This system linked the value of major currencies to the US dollar, which was in turn linked to gold. The Bretton Woods system was the first example of a fully negotiated monetary order intended to govern monetary relations among independent states. In 1971, the Bretton Woods system also collapsed, and major currencies were allowed to float freely against each other.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets,
leading to the current system of fiat currencies that we have today. Fiat money is a currency that is not backed by a physical commodity, such as gold or silver, but is instead backed by the government that issued it. Fiat money is essentially a promise by the government that it will be accepted as payment for goods and services. The value of fiat money is determined by supply and demand, and it can be influenced by government policies, such as interest rates and inflation. Inflation is the general increase in prices of goods and services over time. Governments have the power to print more money, which can lead to an oversupply of money in circulation, leading to an increase in the general price level. This can cause a decrease in the value of the currency and can erode the purchasing power of individuals. So, being centralized and backed by government policies, this monetary system is not working, and the need for a new monetary system is rising. A new type of currency called digital currencies or Bitcoin is making history. Bitcoin is a digital currency that was created in 2009 by an anonymous person or group known only by the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto. Nobody knows the real founder. Bitcoin is unique in that it is decentralized, meaning it is not controlled by a central authority like a government or a financial institution. Instead, Bitcoin operates on a peer-to-peer network that allows for secure, fast, and transparent transactions without the need for intermediaries. Over the years, Bitcoin has gone through many ups and downs, experiencing huge price fluctuations and garnering both praise and criticism from supporters and detractors. Despite the challenges, Bitcoin has continued to grow and evolve, and today it remains one of the most popular and widely used cryptocurrencies in the world. However, there are also significant challenges associated with the adoption of digital currencies. One of the main challenges is the lack of standardization and regulation, which could lead to volatility and uncertainty in the value of the currency. There is also the risk of hacking and cyber attacks, which could compromise the security and stability of the currency. So, there you have it, the incredible journey of money, from bartering to Bitcoin. Who knows what the future holds? But one thing's for sure, we've come a long way. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting content.